What is a delta? Hey, it's me from my channel, and today we're going to talk about what a delta is. But the thickest point located at the middle of the chord, the length of the airfoil. So if we look at this is a symmetrical delta. The chord is divided into two equal halves. The midpoint of the chord is where we have our maximum thickness, and then it tapers off to both the left and the right. So if we're flying along and we hit a bird or something and we get some really, weird flow going on up here, this delta is going to resist that stall much better than other airfoils. So if we're flying through, a very dense, group of trees and we need to go through that at a very high angle, this delta wing is going to be able to maintain lift even at a very high angle, whereas other airfoils might stall. So it's good for low-speed flight as well. Good for high angles of attack, good for high-speed flight, good for resisting stalls. So there's several advantages to having a delta wing. So it is very good for high-speed flight where you might encounter some birds or insects and you don't want your wing to stall. So fighter jets, for example, often have delta wings. God bless you all, and I'll see you next time. Also, if we have this delta wing with the chord located, the maximum thickness located at the middle of the wing, this makes manufacturing the wing much easier. This is called a straight-sided delta. If we had a supercritical airfoil, for example, we'd have this kind of a shape. We'd have the thickest point here, but it would be really hard to manufacture because it's not a straight side, it's a curved side. So we sometimes use a delta just because it's easier to manufacture. It's the same shape on both sides. We can also have an asymmetrical delta. An asymmetrical delta will have the thicker portion, the top or the bottom. But in nature, the wings of insects, the wings of birds, they all have delta wings, delta-shaped wings. Why? Because there are the same advantages to a delta wing in nature as there are to a delta wing on an airplane. Usually we call the top the leading edge, and the bottom we call the trailing edge. When people use the term delta, they could be talking about many different things. Now there are other variations of deltas, but these are the basic shapes of a delta. So why do we use a delta shape for airfoils? Well, because of the way that it generates lift. If we look at this delta and we imagine that there is air flowing across it from left to right because it is curved on the top and relatively flat on the bottom, the air that is flowing over the top has to travel a greater distance than the air that is flowing underneath it. And according to the Bernoulli equation, faster moving air means lower pressure. So we get a lower pressure above, higher pressure below. We get lift. They could be talking about the Greek letter. They could be talking about a triangle. They could be talking about a river. But today we're going to talk about the most common usage of the word delta, which is in reference to a type of airplane wing section, or an airfoil section that is used on wings of airplanes, and also propellers, and also the blades of fans. A delta is an arrow shape. It's really an airfoil shape that has its thickest point, which we call the maximum thickness, or the chord, not the thinnest point. And so an asymmetrical delta will look like this, where it is thicker on the top and thinner on the bottom. However, if we look at this delta, we see that it has this very abrupt angle change from the bottom to the top. And so we have some flow separation going on here. There's a lot of turbulence. And so although this does generate lift, it's not a very efficient shape. So even though we see it on wings of airplanes and propellers and fans, it's not the most common airfoil shape that's used. In fact, it's used for very specific purposes. Now one advantage of a delta is that it is very good at resisting a stall. Another advantage of a delta is that it is very good for high angles of attack. Another place that we find deltas, not on the wings of airplanes. Well, I hope you learned something today. If you did, give us a thumbs up. Remember, knowledge is power. I'm the instructor from my channel,